right. Hello, everyone. This is Pierre and Matteo. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. This is Pierre from Pronto Marketing. I'm the head of marketing here, and I'm joined with Matteo as the head of marketing services at Pronto. Unfortunately, today, Tim Kelsey won't be joining us. He's been sick for the last couple of days. So I'm filling in for him, but you're in the right place and just letting you know that we'll be starting soon. All right. Well, again, thanks everyone for joining. Welcome to How to Build Great Case Studies to Support Sales. This is a very exciting topic that Matteo and I are very keen on covering with all of you today. So first things first, let's just cover the usual agenda items. So we'll be providing the recording, the slide, and resources that we cover in this webinar today. So don't worry about taking notes. We'll be sharing all that with you. We've also got a few special offers for everyone. There's a template that we'll be sharing with all attendees and registrants so that you can leverage the case study outline template that we've put together that we use even internally for our own case studies. So we'll be sharing all that with you, and we'll also have another offer. All right, just to kind of get us started, we want to start off with a very simple question, just to kind of get a sense of how familiar the audience here is with case studies. It's not an unusual topic, but just sort of a simple poll to get us started. Kind of answer yes or no, whether you've ever created a case study in a PDF or PowerPoint format. No wrong answer here, and obviously we're all here to learn about it. So this will just help us as well, kind of pace ourselves as we go through. All right, couple answers coming in. Some people have experienced, some not. Okay. Okay, well, thanks for answering. It looks like, again, some people have created case studies before, some have not, and we'll cover that in more detail right now. Okay. All right, so the overall agenda is how to build a convincing case study, how to plan and write it, essentially, and then techniques that will inspire interest and conversion from a design and layout element point of view. And finally, we'll cover how case studies fit in your content strategy. So really kind of how do we take everything we're going to be covering today on how to get it done and how to take action and really plan for it in your campaigns and content marketing calendar.
Okay, so yeah, how to build convincing case studies. Pierre, if you go to the next slide, at the very start, we need to choose a case study subject. And sometimes people seem to overcomplicate this step a little bit, when in reality, if you have worked with your client long enough, it's quite easy to identify when they qualify for a case study. And really, there's 4 cases in which you would want to look into a case study worthy client. Whether it's a recent project, the most recent a project with a client is, the easier it will be for you and for the client to remember all the details of the projects in more depth, which is always a plus for a great case study. Second, it supports active marketing and sales activities. The closest the case studies highlights a service that you are actively trying to grow, the better. You don't need to build case studies for every service you offer unless you're actively trying to sell those services. For example, at Pronto, we have a service called Citation Building Service. We have a few dozens active clients that are paying us for that specific service, but we don't actively try to sell it. And for that reason, we've also decided not to build case studies for it. So creating good case studies takes time. It's quite time consuming, and it requires a lot of thinking. So we only really want to focus on those case studies that actually sell more of the services we want to grow more aggressively. Also, does the case study fill a gap or expand on your case study portfolio? If you have a service that has a few or no case studies at all, and you want that service to be more popular, then you should try your best to create a few case studies for it. And even if you already have a few case studies for each of your main services, we do recommend continuing to create more. In fact, prospective clients not only look at your last case studies for a service you offer was published maybe 2 years ago. Some people might start to question whether you still offer that service or if you're even able to consistently deliver the results your case study mentions. So always create new case studies, even for the services you already have a few case studies under your belt. Those will never really hurt you. And do the case study match your ideal client profile? Just like you want to build case studies around the services you want to grow, you should also try to build case studies around the type of client you want to attract. If you've worked with a bad fit client and they still got positive results, you may either want to avoid creating a case study for it, or you maybe can create the case study and spin it in such a way that your service is more in the spotlight than the client is. It's not really recommended. So again, try to only create case studies around the type of client that have been successful and the ones that are very good fit for you and for your company.
Yeah, and this is also particularly relevant when you enter a new vertical and new industry. So then, this is after you've kind of gained that experience, you've got a first few clients in that industry, then it's probably a really good time to start writing that new case study. And so that's one of the reasons why you want to always be writing case studies and sort of planning for the next one. And as well, related to point number one in the project recency, one of the elements that you'll probably find out is that when you're working a case study, it may involve more than just yourself. You may be working with service delivery teams and other people that were involved in the project, and that will give you sort of a more holistic story to tell and kind of have gathered more information around the story you're trying to present, which actually brings us to the next slide. So how do you tell a story? So here we're kind of following a high level, essentially way of how we would recommend to kind of present a case study. You want to try to, tell a story so that it's still interesting enough for the reader and the prospective client to kind of go through it. So you're probably familiar with storytelling. Actually, that was one of our very recent blog posts that we wrote on our site and on our blog. So I recommended checking it out. If you're interested in reading it and you haven't seen it, feel free to ping us. But essentially, you want to really kind of establish the client as the hero of that story. He's the character here, and kind of you want to set the background of what was the problem that your client or his company as a whole were facing, not just from a technical point of view, especially if you're selling IT services, you may be tempted to focus on the technical aspect of things, but you also want to be sort of that chief business technology officer that is also looking at how that fits in the client's sort of bigger kind of business context, how they're trying to grow their business and how do they need to have a really robust IT network to support the business objectives that the client has. So from there, kind of essentially inserting as well yourself in that story, and essentially kind of showing how your solutions and how your team was that guide that helped the client implement the right solution. And eventually, really the meat of it is what is the ROI? What are the results that you can show? How did the client that you're working with, how did they see great results, and how did that benefit their business as a whole? So a fairly classic sort of problem, solutions, results type of framework. But I think starting with that, is a really good way to also sort of simplify how you go around planning and then writing that case study.
All right, so yeah, we lead with results. If you go in and see the case studies we've built for ourselves, we always lead with results. At the top of every page, we highlight the metrics that have had the biggest impact on the client we are working with in the specific case study, for the services that we want to promote, or better, for the services that they've had good results with and we want to promote. So in the example you see here, the case study we wrote was around a client that had good success with our Google My Business Management service. And so we asked ourselves, what are the success metrics relevant to this service that made this particular client successful? And so we ended up choosing website clicks, direct calls, and 5-star reviews on their Google My Business profile. So by using big visuals, big numbers, you allow your prospects and whoever visits your case study pages to quickly understand the type of results you've generated, and that together with your headline at the top of the page will determine whether they'll take a few minutes to read the case study or not, really. So this box at the top of your page, leading with results, really help whoever lands on this page to understand very quickly what are they getting into by continuing to read the case study, and whether they are interested in it as well.
Yeah, and essentially this provides a really helpful summary of the overall case study, and so people can get it right away at first glance. What was the outcome? How is this relevant? And then they can kind of start digging in that story a bit deeper, like I was talking about in the previous slide. All right, so what kind of data should you be including? And so again, this is something you want to kind of think about, trying to show year-over-year results, just like in a financial statement, you would show year-over-year results, so that you can kind of be comparing data to another relevant period in time, and kind of show that progression. Now, sometimes you may not have all of that, so you can obviously take sort of a month-to-month approach, or take from the beginning of the project to the end of the project. It will all depend on how long, obviously, you've been working with that client for, and how long it takes to really see results and quantify them. But essentially, if you're able to not just include numbers, but graphs as well, those are other great visuals to back up kind of the statements that you're making. All right, Teo?
Yeah, on top of adding relevant data, charts, and whatnot to your case study page, you also want to make sure you give the customers you are building the case study around a voice. Nobody clicks on a case study to read why your company was so great to make that client achieve the results they achieved. They came for the testimonials of your clients, really. So the sooner you get to the good stuff, the better for them. Importantly, that means this is not really a monologue. Case study is more, as Pierre mentioned before, a real story. Best practice is to keep your intro very short. You have a couple of short paragraphs to set the scene and establish the problem, and then it's time to hand the reins over to your client. Let them describe the challenge they faced in their own words. And this is how you make your case studies more personable and relatable to your prospects. If in fact the type of client you are highlighting in your case study is, the type of client you want to attract as well.
And a really good starting point for testimonials are, as you can imagine, survey results when you've received good testimonials, sort of feedback from your clients when, whether it's a ticket or whether it's at the end of that project, or when they even leave a review online for you. This is a great way to kind of, capture your client's own words. Obviously, if you work very closely with your clients and you have regular meetings, we would even recommend going as far as doing a recorded video or recorded interview with them, just 15, 30-minute, and kind of asking them and prepping them ahead of time that you'd like to capture their testimonials. Those are all good ways to do it. Another approach is even pre-writing it so that you essentially take that off of their plate, and they kind of just either approve it, or that may just inspire them to kind of rewrite it and say it in their own words. So just a few tips on how you may want to approach this. All right. Another key aspect of building a convincing case study is using a lot of graphics. So earlier we showed using graphics to show data, but that's not the only way to do it. Obviously, there's lots of different techniques that you can use, that pertain to the service that you're providing. And that could be, really the work that you're doing. It could be showing the success and the transformation of how the client kind of was able to kind of then be successful. So I think there could be a lot of different strategies here. You could be showing more pictures of the actual people, or you could be showing pictures of the reports and the work that was done at hand. So it doesn't have to only be graphs, but as you can see, what we're trying to highlight here on the slide is showing that there's actually a pretty good balance between text and images. So it's almost 1-for-1. For every paragraph of text, we try to pair with one imagery. And so our length here in case studies kind of vary. We have a minimum sort of templated approach, but sometimes the story has more meat than others. And so we kind of take the liberty to expand it. So that's why you can see one on the left that's sort of a little bit more succinct, and one on the right that's a bit bigger. And actually I can quickly kind of give you an example here of the recent case study that we added. So here you can see the numbers that Matteo has been talking about at the top, and the summary kind of going into that background, looking at some of the imagery, the testimonials, trying to make some of them dynamic if possible, including the graphics.
Again, as we mentioned before, case studies are meant to let your prospects see themselves in your existing or past customer stories. You are really just the guide, and they are the hero, just like Pierre mentioned before. And if at any point while you're working on a case study, it feels as though you are overshadowing the client and becoming the hero of the story, then it's maybe time to pause and start rethinking your story. And so this is also really a reason why also we want to build case studies around services you want to grow and the type of clients you want to attract. Otherwise, the case study will turn more into a story of why you were so great at helping that specific client succeed, which is not what you really want to do. In this case, with a case study, you want to let your clients shine. You are basically there to support their successes.
All right, so we've already covered the first section here. And again, so a lot of the tips that we just covered, we kind of included examples from a web page, and this was obviously intentional because we are a website support company, and we're here to help you build web pages, and case studies is one type of them. And actually, sort of the next poll that we wanted to ask you attending is if you've ever built a case study on your website, because I think a lot of people have the experience of building case studies as a document, either as a PDF or not. But we've definitely noticed that not every client has built case studies on their website. And so this was why we wanted to kind of have this webinar and cover this really important topic. And so from what we could see here among the attendees, a majority of people have not actually added this as a web page yet on their site. So some great action items for all of us after this webinar. All right. Okay. All right. Thanks for answering. Okay, Matteo. So
similar to what Pierre mentioned before about graphics and supporting visuals, make sure that the information on your page is broken down into paragraphs and it's easily skimmable. Generally, user experience best practices that you apply throughout other pages of your site, your homepage, or your service pages also apply to your case study pages. Large blocks of text are kind of off-putting and difficult for readers to follow. So chunking your content into small paragraphs really helps your visitors scan for the information they're looking for. Well-written paragraphs usually consist of maybe only one main point. They start with the main point and they're no longer than maybe 100 or a couple hundred words, and just try to pair them up with imagery, just like Pierre mentioned before.
Yeah. Okay. So there's the amount of text, and then so one way to make it easier is to really try to break down into different sections. Try to think about how your case study is going to be skimmable. How is it going to be easy to read through? And obviously, we've got to remember that there are lots of different type of people that have different reading habits. For one, I definitely am the type of person that skims and likes to be able to skim things very quickly, but then I'll go back and kind of read in more detail. So some people will read all the way to the bottom of the page, but so you do want to try to make sure you have an easy to read page, and that you take into account, yes, some people will want the details, but most importantly, a lot of people will want to be able to scan your page very quickly. And so this kind of goes back to the framework we kind of introduced at the beginning of how you probably want to break it down into a problem solution results framework.
So case studies generally are considered to be mid or bottom of funnel pieces of content. And what this means is that some of the prospects that spend time reading your case studies are potentially very close to making a purchase decision. So generally, you want to make it easy for whomever visits your case study pages to learn more about the services highlighted in the case study itself. So whenever possible, try to link to your service pages where you go into more details about what the services entail, their deliverables, and how you go about executing them. The case study, it's more of a teaser about the service, whereas after linking to your service pages, you can really go more in depth in explaining what all your services are about. This ties well with the next slide. Pierre is going to talk about a little bit more in details about SEO.
Yeah, exactly. So internal linking is a very big part of SEO and a really good way to help the user experience be as useful as possible. So you really want to, link your case studies towards your service pages, but vice versa, you also want to link your service pages to your different case studies. So it kind of goes both ways. And generally, we've seen very good positive signals and from Google when we do this. We tend to see that our keyword rankings go up in the right direction. Because it essentially, like Matteo was also saying earlier in the presentation, it shows even to Google that this is something that a service that you're actively selling and that you're actively staying on top of. And so Google, when it crawls your site, it's able to kind of see, that site structure and how there is relevant content that is speaking to each other, so to speak. And then as well, another element is kind of, just remembering your on-page SEO sort of best practices, trying to think about the title of that page, what people will essentially see in Google, and what may be an enticing title for people to see when they search for IT support services case study. What would be a good title for that, and would make them want to click on it, essentially. And then as well as a relevant summary project description. All right. Anything I missed, Matteo, since this is your area, really?
No, you've covered everything pretty much. Just make sure to think about a potential visitor on this case study page. And if you were to read your own case study page, and at any time while you read it, you feel something is missing, then probably other people will feel that something's missing as well. Try to cover all the gaps you've encountered, whether through linking to other pages or adding more content, or even removing content you feel that part of the content you have initially created aren't adding up to the story. So yeah, generally making sure the user experience is positive. And lastly, if you really want to attract more eyeballs to your case study pages, you can implement, we recommend a subtle pop-up, not those annoying, obnoxious pop-ups in the middle of the page, something a little bit less intrusive, somewhere at the margins of your pages, linking to your case study pages. The idea is that if there is a prospect somewhere, between mid and bottom of the funnel, meaning they're close enough to potentially considering your company and your services as an option, and they see a pop-up communicating a case study, a relevant case study, obviously, then maybe pop-ups could potentially be a good tool for you to use and drive more traffic to these pages and build up, your credibility as a company in your area of expertise, of course.
Yeah, and the example we're showing here is what we would call a slide-in pop-up, meaning that when the users start scrolling down the page, let's say you'll set it around like 30% down. This is when maybe you will start sliding in that pop-up, so they could say, hey, this is additional information that may be useful and relevant for you to read as well. And so kind of highlighting that essentially, once you know that the user has been reading and evidently is showing some interest in the content, and this can be done especially on a blog post. So this is a good way, to move your organic traffic, people going to your blog for the first time. This is then a good opportunity to kind of get them to move on to sort of a more middle of funnel type of piece of content, like Matteo was saying. So essentially, they're learning, trying to troubleshoot a certain problem that they're having. And then they're like, okay, this is interesting. And like, oh yeah, what are the results I can really get from the advice that I'm getting about here on this blog post? All right. So moving on to our third and final section is essentially where do case studies fit in your content strategy. And this is really about now kind of getting you guys to start thinking about how do we start acting on our case studies. And so again, just kind of try to set for yourself a goal of how many case studies a month or a quarter you want to do. At Pronto, we aim for at least 1 or 2 case studies a month. Obviously, we publish a ton of content, and we have different goals and different things we try to aim for. So we also realize that if you have a smaller team, smaller client list, you may want to have a quarterly goal. So at least doing it once a quarter is a fairly reasonable goal that should be achievable by any smaller business. Essentially, yeah, it's just a great way to convince your prospects, and then it will also fuel your other marketing campaigns that you may be running at the same time.
Yeah, I would almost add maybe if you set yourself a goal of building 1 case study per quarter, during that quarter, you want to maybe have maybe a loftier goal on acquiring testimonials from your clients, and some of those testimonials could turn into case studies at the end of the quarter. So build up your testimonials as much as possible, whether through Google My Business or other platforms that allow you to collect testimonials, or even simply by asking your clients via email. And then the best testimonials will turn into case studies. That's probably the easiest way for you to think about which clients deserve a case study page on your website.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about how can you make it easy on yourself and for your clients as well. All right.
And then leveraging case studies in your marketing campaigns is the ultimate frontier, really, of case studies. We've talked about how case studies are really one of the hardest working types of content. They can help you build brand awareness. They can help you present solutions that solve your prospects' pain. They facilitate decision making. Whoever reads your case studies will potentially share them with their direct reports, with their managers, before deciding whether they want to purchase your solution. And really, they showcase your results that then inspire new leads to take action. But again, email marketing is probably the perfect channel for sharing your stories. With hard numbers, big results, generally good stories, case study really leap out of the box. And with email special features like segmentations and sequences, you can then send this interesting stories to the right persons at just the right time to gain new customers in the future. So if you do have an email list, use your email list to your advantage, not to just communicate feature updates, service updates, but also share success stories from existing or previous clients in order for whoever is part of your email list who gave you permission to send them emails to read about what you've been able to do for the successful clients you've worked with.
All right. Okay, and we're nearing the end of the webinar already. So essentially here we want to sort of have a quick summary of what we just presented to all of you, and kind of give you sort of a potential checklist that you can then reuse for when you'll be planning your next case study. So like we said, identify a new successful project, build an outline with your project team, write about the problem, solution, and results, request a testimonial from your client, ideally pre-write it, or even better, if that client has already left a review for you on your Google My Business profile, like Matteo mentioned, or if they even left a bigger review on a site like Clutch. Those are great places that you can extract those testimonials from and build your case study around even. And then finally, go and create that new web page by submitting a request to Pronto. We'll work with you for designing it with you based on the information that you're providing to us, and this will lead into sort of the template that we'll be sharing with you just after this. Yeah, and obviously don't forget to create a a version that you can, share within a sales deck, or potentially, create a PDF document like we were talking about at the beginning of the webinar. Those are all different ways of publishing case studies that are still very much relevant and will be very useful in your sales process. Yeah, and finally, promote it online on social media, on your LinkedIn profile, on Facebook, on and obviously in your email marketing campaigns. All right. That's it.
Yep. Yeah, just as you mentioned, if you want your next case study page built by us, and you are on website or dedicated support, it's really, really easy. Just send an email to support@prontomarketing.com with your requirements, your content, project details, and we'll be happy to support you with that. If you don't have website support, feel free to reach out to us after the webinar, and we'll make sure to let you know about the service itself and what you can get with it.
Okay, on to the special offer. So we've offered this before in our landing page optimization webinar. If you haven't seen it, by the way, feel free to go to our prontomarketing.com/webinars page where you can see the previous one. We'll be offering today a case study page video review if you have one. If you don't have one, then we've also prepared a Google Doc template that you can very easily copy, convert it into a Word doc if you use Word, and it will essentially be kind of a pre-made template of essentially what we just covered today in this webinar. I'll open it up just quickly to give you a quick peek. So essentially, here it is, your background problem. This is just one way of doing, obviously, but often having that template really makes it easier for you afterwards to get it done. So we'll be sharing that with you. Okay, that's it. If there are any questions, feel free to send them now, and we'll be more than happy to answer them. All right, no questions so far. Again, feel free to answer them. Otherwise, we'll keep it short. I know it's the summer at this point. Everyone is starting to plan, their 4th of July or going on summer holiday. I know Matteo and I are looking forward to going home and seeing family soon. So with that, I hope everyone enjoyed the webinar. Oh, thanks, Miguel. Here's a question. So if clients are reluctant to participate, how do you suggest that we sell them on the idea? Matteo, any suggestion on this one?
Well, I guess there needs to be a little bit of a win-win situation for both you and the client you want to build a case study around. So it would be really just maybe a matter of explaining that by having a page on the site, it will potentially provide some exposure to their business. But really just if that maybe doesn't cut it, you could potentially try and use some Amazon reward cards if they're willing to participate to your case study by leading testimonials and generally commentary to whatever you need in order to fill out the page and make sure the content is complete.
Yeah, I definitely agree with your first point about the win-win. I think it will definitely create publicity, not just for you, but also for that client, and as well, even from a marketing point of view, it will help their SEO, not just yours. Gift cards are also a really good idea. One way you can do it is also a offering to donate to a charity, or but if they really don't want to do it, then this has happened to us, not just because the client was reluctant per se because he was unhappy with the work that we did. It was more that it was more of a type of business that was in the financial services industry where the client wasn't really comfortable with having his name or information kind of being published because due to the sensitive nature of the work. So in this case, what we ended up doing is we just anonymized the case study. So it's not ideal, but instead we just said that this was a financial services business, and essentially we just made it anonymous for this one use case. All right, we've got a couple. Oh, we just answered the question. Yeah, and so again, if the client doesn't approve your testimonial, which could be another case. We've had that happen as well before, where we just didn't get approval from the client to use a certain testimonial. So instead, we used a testimonial from a team member that was involved on the project. And I think that's another good way to kind of promote your team, promote your brand and the people that do help clients. So as an alternative to having a client testimonial. All right. Happy to take in any final questions. All right. Okay, well, again, thanks everyone for attending and sticking around all the way. I hope you have a really good summer, and we have one more webinar planned in July. So it will be a bit later, so you can enjoy some time off for the 4th of July or any other vacation you have. Until then, it will probably be towards the end of the month, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.